Hello and welcome to New Central Television. I am Lekon Obanjo. Here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin in North America, where President Donald Trump has escalated tensions on the growing trade dispute with Canada, threatening significant retaliatory tariffs following Ontario's decision to impose a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the U.S. In a post on Truth Social, Trump announced he would introduce a 25% tariff on Canadian electricity, potentially raising costs for Americans, especially in northern states like New York, Michigan, and Minnesota, which rely on Canadian power. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has warned that the surcharge could increase electricity bills by $100 per month. Trump also threatened to impose even higher tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium, increasing them to 50%, a move he says would make Canada one of the highest tariffed nations in the world. The announcement rattled the stock markets, causing initial drops, although the Nasdaq regained some ground, while the S&P 500 and Dow remained lower. In response, Ford warned of the possibility of cutting off electricity supplies to the U.S. entirely. To discuss this, I am joined by Ejike Okpa, a global affairs analyst. Thank you so much, Mr. Okpa, for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, Trump's threat to increase tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium to 50% seems like a pretty drastic move. Do you think this is more of a negotiating tactic, or do you believe it could escalate it could actually escalate into something more serious for the U.S.-Canada trade relations?
Well, tariff, as we know it, is a very simple thing. It's more like a taxation on goods and services that cross border. And so anytime, trade is usually something, it's either bilateral or multilateral. But, in this case, it's, U.S. and Canada. And what the president is doing is looking at, hey, we spend so much money with Canada, and we're having a deficit, and how do we balance that? And how to balance it is to look at what Canadians are selling to Americans and say, okay, since you're not buying much from us, we're going to have to tax you some kind of way to do what level the level playing field, or in economic terms, what they call the balance of trade. It is, anytime you do it, even the country proposing it and the country that is at the receiving end of it, there's going to be some short pains or, some stress, but this normally will end up being harmonized because, Canada, if they're not being able to sell what it is they produce to America, then the economy is not going to grow, and if America is not able to buy it at the price that they want, then America is going to suffer. So basically what a tariff does when it's proposed is to get the two parties to a table and start to talk. And how do we, because it's a symbiotic relationship, how do we walk away from this and everybody's a winner?
But then we're talking about a bilateral relationship here. I mean, you said there's a need for them to come to the table to talk. Should it go this route of announcing drastic moves on tariffs instead of coming to the table and finding some sort of diplomacy around trade discussions if it's open to move America forward economically?
Well, the president has the biggest microphone. I mean, nobody will get, bigger attention than the president. When he says something, then everybody sort of got to be like, have a reaction to it. So yes, he will say it, but that does not make it a law, and that does not get him in necessarily what he wants. So what he's going to do is he's going to put the other side, on notice and say, we're going to do this, and the other side looking at what it is they're going to lose or what they're going to gain, and say, okay, can we talk? And that's where the diplomacy comes. So there's no prescribed way you can do this thing. But, the American president has the biggest microphone in the world. That people may dispute with that. But they find that when he says something, it's like, when I sneeze, you catch cold. Mm-hmm. And that's what he's doing. And in that case, Canada know that if they don't have a good economic relationship with America, they're going to suffer. Because again, we have the choice of looking to the southern border and getting the same thing. So They're going to come to the table. The trade guys will get together now and start to push papers and say, okay, how do we get this thing resolved? But this, ego is part of leadership. And is also included in that is a bluff. Hey, who am I going to rattle and how are they going to react? Are they going to be confused and such that they don't know what to do? Are they going to, try to maintain their own prestige and say something, but at the same time, the back room, there's always say in America, the back room thing happens, and then everybody resolves it.
All right, now the Ontario Premier, that is Duke Ford, warned that the surcharge could hike electricity bills for residents. What do you think the domestic fallout in Ontario might look like with this?
Well, this is our nature, because I live in Texas. Texas is one of the states in the union that has their own independent power. So we're not looking to anybody to send us power. Our power source comes mainly from Texas, except for a little percentage where we share with New Mexico. But other states, because of the size of it, they have that transmission line going across state lines, and in this case, Canada. But again, power is a service, it's a product some kind of way. If they generate it and they don't sell it, they don't move it, what are they going to do with it? Power is one of those things you have to generate and use it. You don't go put it in a storage like you do water. And so, again, the states that are affected are going to either call the president and say, here's the impact on us, what do we do? Remember, it is one of those things, I'm going to, make the noise, and then we'll see who's going to respond. So the electricity issue, maybe that is why even in Texas, our governor just announced additional 10,000 megawatts we're going to produce. Because again, we don't want to be subjected to anybody wanting to take advantage of that. And power is one of the most important ingredients in an economic development. If you don't have it, you ain't gonna go anywhere. So it's not gonna cause a shutdown. It's just gonna, maybe we'll just see some spikes in the rates we pay, but it's not gonna be something that we cannot afford. But the parties that are gonna be affected are obviously gonna want to do what? Come to the table and negotiate. Remember, the act of negotiation is if you're weak when you go to negotiate, and you're going to get trampled upon. But if you have something to offer, then it's a matter of, shifting the deck and the cards and see how, which hand you play in order for you to go away a winner.
Well, you keep talking about negotiation. Now, if Ford follows through on the idea of cutting off electricity supplies to the U.S., don't you think it will have some sort of rippling effects in international trade between the U.S. and of course, Canada, with a new Prime Minister who is said to be more outspoken than Justin Trudeau?
It's not going to just be flipping a switch and they cut it off. They're not going to do that. I mean, in that kind of situation, there are things you cannot do. But if, of course, they have to, threaten that as if, okay, I don't like what you're doing, and boom, all of a sudden I'm going to go to the switchboard and flip it. It's not going to happen. It just, again, Canada is trying to flex their own muscle and say, oh, by the way, you need us for this. If you don't get to where we want to do a deal, then we're going to do X, but they're not going to do it. Because the transmission line, it could be who owns the transmission line. The transmission line could be owned by another entity. All Canada is doing is generating power and dumping it on that line. Because in America, we have deregulation of electricity. So we have the generating companies, the transmitting company, and the company that bring it into your home. So there's not one source that monopolizes that. And so you still have to go through a series of things, before you can flip that. And again, if you flip it, how long are you going to, keep it shut down? So they're not going to get to that point, but it's one of those things you have to throw out and get the other side to pay attention. But they already know this, so there's nothing anybody throwing at each other. They already know. You just are like, okay, let's talk.
Well, I just hope that Trump knows what he's doing and is going about it the right way. Ejike Okpa, Global Affairs Analyst, it was nice talking to you on the news. Thank you.
Again, I gotta thank you for having me. Like I said, next time I come to Nigeria, you taking me to the shop where you buy your clothes.
Of course, no problem. I'll do that.